Scott Wozniak is a white boy with glasses who lives in Ohio and is currently running the Scott the Woz YouTube channel. Initially starting off making skit-based short films like The Internet and You, the channel would begin to make weekly video game-based comedy review videos in 2017 that quickly gained a massive fan following and recognition among YouTube audiences. In 5 years, he has quickly gained over 1 million subscribers in spite of no longer releasing his content on a weekly basis and shows no sign of stopping. Now, episodes of Scott the Woz don't have a set formula, but they do have a lot of running motifs and tropes, from the opening line of "Hey all, Scott here," to the episodes usually opening and ending on a major joke that's only loosely related to the topic of the episode, to the comedy stylings of the show itself. While the offbeat comedy of the show varies from absurd visual gags, silly comparisons to other things, or the over-the-top way some lines of dialogue are delivered, it all has a distinct flavor that screams Scott the Woz. You know a Scott the Woz joke when it hits you, and I can see why others have tried imitating the style for their own channels. Though I think what's most admirable about the Scott the Woz channel, even now when it's become a much bigger production, is the classic YouTube do-it-yourself feel to it all. As YouTube videos have gotten bigger and bigger with production value over time, it feels like the common guy can't even reach that point without gaining the clout the YouTube man has. But even when Scott goes big and has a lot of polish to his videos, I still get a motivational, "I can do this too" vibe to it all. It's like when AVGA got popular back in the late 2000s and a bunch of people were inspired by him to give the whole internet video business a try. Scott may not be groundbreaking in the grand scheme of YouTube, but he's still inspiring me and so many others to keep on creating content just for how fun it can be. While the show is focused on video games, some of the most iconic episodes of Scott the Woz are specials that tackle wackier subjects than normal, with a fun adventure to boot. The Christmas episodes are the most prominent examples, covering such subjects as Madden 08, Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops, and Bargain Bin Games. And while all those videos are super entertaining, with legitimate messages and themes to dissect about them, my personal favorite of these specials has to be the 200th episode spectacular, Borderline Forever. This video starts off with a parody of educational PSAs about how to review video games, which is a funny satire about all the tropes involved with video game reviews, like screaming, the Nemesis games, swearing, etc., featuring a bunch of cameos from various content creators watching along, which makes for a fun game of, "Oh, I know that guy." After that, we get a good old song and dance about stupid Nintendo games, along with a 30-minute retrospective about the pros and cons of all the Nintendo consoles from the NES to the Nintendo Switch. But when playing Super Mario 3D World, Scott notices a blue border. And then notices that he himself has been surrounded by a blue border the whole time as well. Yes, this is the episode where Scott acknowledges the blue border watermark throughout his series, and starts to have an existential crisis about it, which leads him to visit the fan-favorite character, the therapist. This leads to Scott going into his brain, where an interesting musical number takes place, and not just because of how different a genre punk rock is from the usual Scott the Woz original music, but because of the lyrical content. Scott references various running gags from the show and seems to be sick of it all. He literally says in the lyrics themselves he wants to break the mold and try not to follow a path, implying he feels limited by the weekly video game discussion show. I could be reading way too much into it, and I don't think Scott hates what he's created here, but I think the song is simply him venting his frustrations with some of the downsides of producing such a popular comedy series, with the expectations, anxieties, and repetitions that come with it. A lot of YouTubers, hell, a lot of artists are forced into a box of making specific kinds of content, either to meet ends meet or not to mess with their viewership and audience, which this song expresses really well. After that song and dance, various side characters from the Scott the Woz lore come in and are annoyed by the blue border as well. Scott and the gang attempt to inform the masses about the border through a Jax Films cameo, but they fail, and Ohio ends up being consumed by the blue border, so Scott and the gang go up to space to defeat the border once and for all. After a space battle between Madden cover athletes, Scott and the gang try to stop the blue border, but it simply can't be defeated, so Scott bonds with the border so only he can be mildly annoyed by it, meaning the world is saved. There's many great things about Borderline Forever that make it a legitimate masterpiece in my eyes, and this bare-bones plot recap didn't do them all justice. Thanks to the many callbacks and references to past episodes, both big and small, it feels like a culmination of the past 5 years of Scott the Woz. It can be viewed as a hilarious look of the history and current state of the YouTube game review community through the opening skit, and even about the state of Scott the Woz itself, by acknowledging the blue border and all the recurring gags. I'd even argue with the way it uses these elements, Borderline Forever feels like a grand finale to the Scott the Woz show, and while Scott has kept on Scotting and Wozing ever since, I would have been content if Scott decided to stop it here. Overall, I'd say we love Scott the Woz for many different reasons. His humor, his video presentation, his devotion to selling merchandise for charity, and so many others. In fact, down in those darning comments, let me know why you love Scott.